Good morning, one and all.
Good morning.
What Dave and Herb didn't say is this is a reverse question and answer session. I ask the questions, you give the answers. Title, what do you call your spouse's parents? Think about it. The usual process for a couple is they meet, they go on a date, get engaged, get married, find a place to live, and invite the in-laws over. So what do you call the in-laws? I'm going to ask you, think about, Diane and I spoke earlier, what does Joe call his in-laws, or at least mother-in-law? I know she was here for a while.
Well, Joe called them Mom and Dad. They preferred to be called by their first names. So his dad was also named Joe and Audrey.
Frank, did you ever get to meet Kathy's parents? And your words to them were? How do you refer to them?
Park and Helen. Her dad's name was Park and her mom's name was Helen.
Did you get to meet Frank's parents?
I did not.
So that's a situation similar to what I had with Marcia's parents. Her father had passed. I met her mother once before we got married because her mom passed away a month before we got married. And I referred to her as Mrs. Ledoux, showing some common courtesy and respect. Interesting. Pat, your situation on...
Since this is PG rated here, Ron and Margaret love them dearly. They're like parents to me. It's always been that way. They've always been the greatest thing I've ever had. So, well, Pat, period.
John.
I call by their first name, P and G.
And your wife calls?
Everett and Iona.
Interesting, interesting. My first marriage, when I met her parents dating, it was Mr. and Mrs. Evans. Then as we got married, my parents wanted to be called Mom and Pops. So we called her parents Mum and Dad, because her parents were of English descent, and in England, mum is the word. A little side note, her father, Belinda's father, was the original E.T. He went by the nickname of Jock. He signed his legal papers E.T. His name was after a Welsh poet, Elvet Taliesin. So he called himself E.T. So I met the original E.T. Bob, what say you?
First names.
First name.
Yes, sir, for both sets.
Our newest member.
Thank you. First names, Dorothy and Chris. That's mine.
Interesting. Going to meeting with Vanessa's side of the family. As many of you know, I dearly call her Mommy, and I'll let her fill in the humorous details of why I call her Mommy. And her stepdad, with something that I walked into, was Mr. Bob. So I call him Mr. Bob. And they call me Sonny Boy. It's a very interesting process that couples go through. And I'm ending the speech with a thought. Maybe you should ask them, what do you wish to be called? Because they may not appreciate first names. Because there is that age difference between you and your parents and her or his parents. Coleman.
To their face, first names. Behind their back, your crazy mom. She uses the same about my mom too.
Cheryl, you got some names for us?
Mom and Dad.
Both sides?
I think Larry calls my mom, Mom, and when my dad was alive, he called him Si.
Okay. So, interesting. Unfortunately, Vanessa never did get to meet my parents in person. When we went back to my hometown, I introduced her to my parents. She passed away 20 years ago. That's the best I can do. But it's an interesting hurdle that we all have to face, go through. And being married 3 times, there were 3 different hurdles I had to overcome, understand. I know, Dave, you were engaged once. How did you refer to her parents?
Jen's father's name was Stuart and her mother was Carol.
So it was on a first name basis.
First name basis.
And,
They insisted on it.
okay, I know that your mom was still alive. Did she get to meet her? And,
She got to meet Jen, but not the parents.
oh, okay. So that's something to think about. And the gem of this idea, and I challenge you with it, it was in the Wall Street Journal. There's a funny little article, and I said, that's an idea for a speech. What do you call your in-laws? And as we went around the table, you could see the difference. And I know Herb has a good one for his mother-in-law. You can share that.
Yes.
What do you call your mother-in-law?
Well, her nickname was Snooky, and that's all I ever called her. If I could just paraphrase it, it was interesting because the only time I really dealt with my in-laws is when we were traveling from the East Coast to the West Coast to go overseas or coming back. So I didn't deal with them on a frequent basis. So it was always Snooky and Jimmy.
So I hope you enjoyed the humor as we went around the table to see what people actually ended up calling part of their new family. And with that, are you in control? Mr. Ghostmaster, come on back up.